Matt, you've had a wild last couple of weeks with your career. You've been going from company to company. First year with
We're still on this mid-level cap. How long is it gonna go?
Yeah, you're jumping around. You're making all kinds of crazy decisions. I just want to congratulate you on getting hired by Microsoft and being in charge of the new acquisition. Apparently, you're trying to buy Valve, from what I hear, for around $16 billion. That's an interesting play, Matt. What's your idea here? Is you're like, Activision wasn't enough. We got to own all the games, all of them.
I just want more money, level cap. I want more money, all of the money. Yeah. I did not hear about this acquisition at all.
This might not be real. It's just a rumor.
Okay.
And it's been kind of making its way around the internet that Valve or Microsoft is either offering or in talks, or there's something happening.
There's just no shot that actually would go through, though. Like, the fact that they were struggling getting Activision Blizzard, and then to be like, oh, hey, we're also going to have Valve now. Now, granted, Valve doesn't really make many games anymore, but still, they would completely corner the market on PC at that point. Like, they'd have Game Pass, and then they'd have Steam. Also, what would that even mean for Game Pass? And what would that mean for Steam? I would not want that at all.
Yeah,
that sounds very bad.
I will say that there's a huge amount of skepticism as to whether or not this is even real. I just have seen it talked about quite a lot in the past.
That's a little reassuring.
In the past week. Also, part of the skepticism is that 16 billion seems kind of low for Valve.
Right.
Which I would have to agree as well. If they are the biggest distribution platform for games, you're like, it seems like what they'd make in a month, or something.
Yeah.
It's got to be a lot.
Valve's making absolute bank, I'm sure.
Yeah. But I hope it's not real. There isn't really much of a benefit to one company gobbling up all of this stuff, even if you're liking some of the things that certain companies are doing. Like, I do think that Microsoft's made a lot of smarter decisions in the past couple of years, and they're doing some things that I like, but that doesn't mean I want them to own everything, because ultimately it's just,
well, even if you flip it around, let's say Valve bought Microsoft, just hypothetical, it makes absolutely no sense. I wouldn't even want that, right? Like, I prefer the way Valve's been handling things. I don't even want them to have like all of Microsoft and every other company. It's just not good for us players and consumers and everything. It's terrible.
Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, these rumors are not true, and we're not talking about it in another podcast down the road. And, hopefully Matt doesn't get his way with his acquisition plans for Microsoft.
I mean, if I've been going from, like all these companies to go to like making big decisions at Microsoft, I must be doing something right.
Yeah. So welcome to the Level With Me podcast, everybody. The gaming news, whatever we're into podcast that myself, Level Cap, and Matimio do every week here on Wednesday. And if you want to watch it on Monday, if you want to watch the live stream, which about 3,000 people are watching right now, you can click our little Patreon button that's in the video description or the podcast description and come support us over on Patreon. We appreciate it very much. All those funds are going towards potentially buying Matimia a future wife once that becomes legal again, or we'll find some loophole, Matt. We looked this up, and we were very disappointed to find out that it is now illegal to do mail order bride stuff.
I don't know why you keep using this we term.
I mean, we're a team. We looked it up together. When you look up something while we're on the podcast, we look it up. Really, I mean, we're kind of.
I think it's when you look something up on the podcast, you do it.
We're here. We're producing a podcast together. One of us looks something up. We're all looking it up. Really.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'll find out a way to somehow procure Matt a wife with the funds from Patreon that we appreciate it very much.
No.
So Matt, what have you been playing this week?
A lot of XDefiant.
A lot, really, not a little.
Yeah.
You're into it.
I've played it 3 days so far, and I've been enjoying. Surprisingly, I've been enjoying my time with it. It's been a good time. Have you had a chance to play it at all?
I dabbled, played a couple rounds with it.
We'll dabble. Okay.
Yeah, it's been interesting because the opinions on it have been controversial. I haven't played enough to give a strong opinion on it. It felt competent from hopping on. I waited until whatever their server stuff they had on launch day got cleaned up.
Yep.
But yeah, it seems like free to play COD, kind of a little more old school, which I like. I think is a better approach to the way they do things. You know, it's not as kill streak crazy as Call of Duty is, which I appreciate.
Yeah, they kind of have kill streaks, but not really at the same time, because everyone has abilities that go on cooldown, so you can use those. And then if you do really well, then you can activate your ultimate ability sooner than everyone else, which can be really beneficial to you winning the round. So like, you've got the Echelon, which will literally give you wall hacks, like actual wall hacks, and a pistol that will pretty much one-shot depending on the distance. You've got the Cleaners, who whips out like a flamethrower. You've got the Phantoms, who can have like a bubble shield thingy. It's defensive. And yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it. Like you said, it's old school Call of Duty. It even has like kind of that absolute ridiculous movement system, which will be hit or miss for some people. We'll talk about that probably in a second. And I don't know, it plays well. Netcode's a little rough, which we'll probably also talk about. But all in all, I've been enjoying my time with it.
Yeah,
surprisingly.
I'll admit I'm surprised here. You say that you've been playing it for 3 days, just because it didn't wow me in any way. It felt like and it doesn't seem like it's designed to wow anybody. They're just like, no, this is a competent game that's doing a specific thing that we want to do well. And it's free on top of that. I'm wondering if it's going to have legs, like long-term legs.
Okay, full disclosure, I did do a sponsored stream for it. So I do need to mention that.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so I do need to mention it. I did do a sponsored little segment. I'd like to think that my opinion cannot be bought, but there's probably always a little bit something at the back of someone's head, So just want to be fully transparent. The one thing I do like about it is that it, like you said, it's just a competent game. Like I think so many FPS gamers out there are just looking for something different to play. We've got the games that are there right now have been around for decades, and people are just looking for that new thing. And I'm kind of one of them. And while, like you said, this isn't doing anything like crazy or different, it is competent enough to keep my attention, and the moment to moment action. And when the netcode works properly, it's really satisfying. I find the weapons to be enjoyable when you start popping heads left and right, and you keep hearing there's this really satisfying like ping noise that aggressively gets like louder and more like exciting. You're like, oh, I'm doing really well, and then it just works.
It's cool, man. It's good. It's interesting that the old school formula still has it to a degree, where it feels like the whole industry is trying to evolve beyond classic Call of Duty and classic Battlefield to some degree. And they're like, that's the way we used to play first person shooter games. The new way is extraction shooters and battle royales and whatnot. And then Ubisoft is like, well, what if we just did COD, but for free? And a lot of people like it. There's a lot of people that
it's
also
been in development
hate
for a
it.
very long time.
Yeah, and it's for what Ubisoft has achieved for the amount of time and the size that Ubisoft is. I'm sort of wondering where all the time went to some degree. It's not that it's not a good looking game. It is a very good looking game.
I think it's just a smaller team. I think the head guy, Mark Rubin, I think it's Mark Rubin. He said like, yeah, we're a smaller team. Like we don't have the budget like other games have. So even though we are under Ubisoft, it's not like we've got this massive bloated budget that we can just throw money at the problem.
Yeah. I'd imagine they're being a little more stingy lately too, because all the studios are canceling projects left and right. And so anybody who's still around is like not asking for extra budget. They're like, we're fine. We're
okay. Don't worry about it. We'll get the game out to you eventually. Don't worry.
Yeah. We're just a cheap little side project over here.
Yeah. The one thing I found interesting is, so the big selling point for a lot of Call of Duty fans is there's no skill-based matchmaking according to the developers. And I feel like I've noticed it, but it's like, have I noticed it or not? Because games are fun. It doesn't feel ultra well. Okay, so this is where it kind of gets funny. Depending on who you ask, either games are super sweaty or they're not. It's like what they're looking for. It's like, why are some people saying games are really sweaty and other people are not? Because I thought the whole point of not having skill-based matchmaking was to ensure that there was less sweat. Right, overall.
Yeah, that's a hard one to gauge, right? Because I want to believe Ubisoft on there not being skill-based matchmaking, and I mean, I do to some degree believe them, but it might also just be what time are you logging in to play? Who are you up against? Maybe there's all these different factors. It's hard to know also like how their whole matchmaking system works. Are you being matched with similar players a lot? So if you got into a sweaty lobby, would you just stay in that sweaty lobby for a while?
Yeah, it could be completely random. Yeah, you just got really unlucky for a while. Or it also could be that you're slightly below average. A game, your skill is below average. And so when you go against a lobby that is average, that you're on the bottom side of things, that means most people are going to be a little bit better than you. And it's going to feel quote unquote sweaty. Right?
Yeah. I wonder how many gamers think that they're like top tier and they're average today. I mean, gamers are getting a lot better than they used to be, Yeah,
no, like, oh yeah, 100%, definitely.
Not only is there like tons of tutorials on just how to get better at any game out there, but the amount of PC gamers and now console gamers with the heavy aim assist stuff coming in there are able to compete pretty well against top tier PC players. With all
I also think it's that
stuff.
people can emulate. They can see a pro player and they can see how they play, and they're like, "Oh, that's how you play."
Yeah, it's like streaming. They watch the streams and they're like, "Oh, whoa, look at this dude's technique. He's not even doing the thing that I do. He's skipping that whole step, and saving time and whatnot." Exactly. Yeah, so the tools just now for getting better are so much more abundant as opposed to just like when we grew up, it was like LAN parties and stuff. You're like, "Whoa, that guy you'd like." Look at somebody's PC and then be like, "Oh, how are you getting like such better response time on your mouse or something?" And they'd like show you their Windows settings or something. You're like, "Whoa, interesting." That information wasn't out there, man. Yeah, old school. I remember playing Quake 3 against somebody who was playing on a joystick and he was really good. I was like, "What is happening, man?" Like,
wild.
I know, right? And they just, I don't know, they got used to playing on a joystick and just stuck with like a not like an analog stick from a controller, like a full-on flight sim joystick. And I was like, all right.
No, I got you.
Yeah, on PC.
The two big complaints I've seen of the game so far is the netcode. Netcode is one, and movement. The netcode is a little hit or miss. I've seen like footage online on people complaining about how they'll be like getting shot through like pretty much like buildings, right? Like they're just, it's like the kill cam shows the person literally on the other side of the building. So either they're cheating or something's really messed up. So I've had experiences and I've had moments where you're trying to take out a guy and you're like, why aren't they taking damage? Like I'm even hearing the hit marker, but they're not taking any damage. And that sucks. When it works and you're like using a weapon that can two-shot and you're just popping heads and taking people out, it's pop, 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 pop. It's really satisfying. Though, unfortunately, that can be a little inconsistent and lead to frustration.
That is a weird one to see from Ubisoft because they're not inexperienced when it comes to multiplayer games and even shooters. They've got Siege. They've done a whole bunch of their Division stuff has been multiplayer, so they've had to deal with multiplayer and netcode and all that stuff for quite a while. So seeing these problems from Ubisoft is a little bit unusual, especially after they've done several rounds, I think, of betas at this point with people playing and all that stuff. So hopefully they can get that ironed out so it's not one of the complaints.
Now, one of the reasons why it might feel that way is because the movement is just absolutely bananas. Like you can run, crouch, you'll slide a little bit and you can immediately jump and you're just flying around everywhere and it makes it tough to track enemies. And I think either the netcode can't keep up because of that high, crazy movement. Like the amount of just bouncing around and everything, like the game probably just can't keep up. And I just can't keep up. Like there are some players you go against, you're just like, please, the jump key is going to blow up. Stop spamming the ever living hell out of it, right?
Yeah,
And
they're poor keyboards, man.
yeah.
In fast-paced games like that too, it's the animations. It's really hard for the animation team to give enough lead in to a movement so that it's really hard to track. So you don't see somebody leaning into a turn or something like that, and you're like, oh, let me anticipate their movement and track along with them. It's just they change directions, and then you have to be like, all right, what's my reaction time? 250 milliseconds? All right, let's watch that tick along as my brain slowly like tracks and tries to keep up with that.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right, and you just can't keep up. Like you just because they want it to feel responsive for the player that's moving. Because if you make it too sluggish, then you got something like Tarkov where it's just like you're just like clunking along. So you want to be able to feel responsive, but then on the other side, when you are watching someone do that, it just physically cannot keep up.
There's no way to make those animations look fluid, and it makes it frustrating to track. So there's either a sweet spot for most people, where I think, Battlefield has probably hit like a nice sweet spot for the average gamer in terms of like movement speed, not feeling too sluggish and still feeling responsive. But every time you start pushing too far in one or the other direction, there's people on either side that complain, like you just said with Tarkov feeling too sluggish and this game feeling too fast. It's like, what is the sweet spot? Is this game just super sweaty and fast paced, and that's just what it is?
But it's also fun. Like I don't want to like diminish the fact. Like I have enjoyed it.
Hey, you played it for 3 days, man.
Right. I might even play it tonight because it's got the double XP weekend, baby. Ooh. Oh, speaking of, the XP is so slow. Like I know it's a free to play game, but my God, it takes so long to level up these weapons. So they're doing a double XP right now, and that's what I feel like it should be for just normal progression. Just baseline. But they're like, no. So once this is over with, it's gonna be a real rude awakening again to be like, oh, that's right. This is slow.
I wonder if they're doing that just because it's free to play, and they're like, we can't just churn out 1,000 guns every month. Like you just gotta grind for stuff for a while.
They do have a great season pass or not season pass, but like a roadmap. So I think there's going to be a new season every 3 months, and every single month there'll be a new map that comes out. There'll be like new weapons. Each season will have a new faction, which will have its own unique abilities and characters. Like I'm assuming there's going to be like Rainbow Six Siege. Maybe they'll even bring in like their Assassin's Creed franchise, stuff like that. I know that sounds ridiculous because it is, but whatever. It's like a crossover Marvel nonsense Ubisoft title. And if they can actually stick with that roadmap and legitimately do a new map every month, and every 3 months you get like really big, season faction with season pass and battle pass, whatever, it might have some legs to it. Might be something that people come back to, every so often to check out the new content.
As much as I want to kind of like poo-poo or be an elitist about them mixing all of their franchises together in like a shooter game, it's pretty smart, because then you're like, oh, I love Rainbow Six Siege, but I wouldn't play a Call of Duty game. And then you see your Rainbow Six and you see Tachanka and you're like, well, maybe I'll check it out.
Maybe I'll check it out. Yeah.
Maybe I'll check it out. Sam Fisher shows up and you're like, oh, I mean, I guess I could try it, They
also don't need to spend time trying to create brand new characters.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of effort to try to make something unique. Like that effort's already been made. We already know what works in these other games. We already know what's popular.
Yeah.
Just put it in.
Yep. It's smart. I'm more curious to see where it's going. I don't know, like if the gameplay doesn't totally appeal to me anymore, just because I'm an old gamer who's like, I've been playing Call of Duty since before you were born, so I'm just not particularly wowed by it, but I can appreciate what it is, and I'm curious to see how it fares and how it changes up the market, because Call of Duty is directly competing with a big chunk of their multiplayer, and then what as COD becomes, we don't know totally. It's kind of a giant amalgamation as it is already. So,
well, I'm a little biased because I'm a streamer, so like new games and something I can just vibe with my chat is always going to be appealing.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, I don't know if this is going to last. I hope that it does, but also at the same time, I'm just going to enjoy it in the here and the now. I had people come in and be like, this game's going to die in 2 weeks. It's like, okay, well, I'm having fun now. So
Yeah.
cool, whatever. It's like, I'm enjoying myself in the here and the now. I'm not playing an investment. It's not like the stocks are going up for the game. I'm just
especially with the free
it.
to play too. You're not like, the review is, sure, a review's important for it, or your opinion's important, but also if somebody hops on to play it, all they're losing is like their time to check it out,
which is valuable.
Yeah, but yeah, you'll know within 10 minutes of playing it if it's a game that you like or not. Yeah,
right.
So not that big a deal. Did you hear? IGN bought basically most of their competition.
Their competition that apparently was failing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's game news, game journalism, with heavy quotation marks there.
Yeah.
No offense to legit game journalists out there, but the entire industry is kind of going through some stuff right now.
Reactionary.
Yeah.
Regurgitation of basically talking points that game devs and game studios pump out. Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. Or just, the people writing the reviews are just not invested in the brand or they're writers more than they are gamers. Game journalism is this giant pot of just like, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's terrible, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency. So IGN bought GameIndustry.biz, Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, VG247, and Dicebreaker. And
a lot.
Yeah, did I say that? Dicebreaker? I'm not as familiar with them. Just want to make sure it wasn't Icebreaker or something. But I think that's what it's called. It's kind of weird because obviously, like, you can argue that there isn't a monopoly on game journalism because there are independent platform. There's YouTube reviewers. There's people on Twitch giving their opinion on things and whatnot. And I do think a lot of people go to those independent sources to sort of get their takes on it before buying a game. And we appreciate your support, by the way, for that. But at the same time, when I'm scrolling my news feed, the amount of IGN articles that come up for game related stuff or PC Gamer or whatever it is, it's a lot. Like, those guys, they're paying for the SEO results, the search engine optimization results. So they show up in the news feed. So they are, regardless of if we want to pretend like IGN is like some dinosaur, they are not.
It's not.
They're huge. And in fact, with my sort of talking with a lot of game developers now, since that's like becoming my circle a bit more, all game trailers go to IGN. They pay money for IGN to...
Oh, do they?
Yeah. There's a lot of money that comes in for IGN to just post the game trailer because it goes out to all of their audiences, which is huge. It's a massive audience.
Now, what's wild to me is
they
could have just okay, so let's say they don't post let's say they don't get paid by the company. Would IGN just not post the trailer? Are they that big now where they're just like, they didn't come to us for the trailer?
I don't know the nuances of a lot of how that works, but
because I would feel like they would just post the trailer regardless, because it still makes them revenue, right, off of just the... I
don't know, but my guess is that for most stuff the answer might be no. And on top of that, wild. Not only do they post it, but they request to post it first too. They're like, don't anybody else post it first, don't you post it first, don't whatever,
which just feeds into their whole system of, we get a lot of views from our trailer reveals.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, yeah, of course you do, because you're the only one who's posting it, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, but from what I hear, it's absolutely worth the money to pay IGN
I believe it.
To post. And that's not even a review or anything either. That's just IGN posting a trailer.
They're more of a media company than a review company at this point.
Yeah. I think you could say that. And for the record, I know people that work at IGN and have worked at IGN who are good game journalists, and they do have good articles on stuff that go in depth and all that, especially for big titles. I feel like they get people who are aware of those games, good at those games, and know what they're talking about with them. But at the same time, it's just not good for one company to control that much of the media segment and stuff. And I'm sure the other companies were failing to some degree because IGN was gobbling up all of those
Scooping
media
them up.
dollars and stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of wild.
I wonder what it's in for IGN.
What's what?
What's in it for IGN to buy all these companies? Are they just going to keep them up the same way? Or are they going to like
I don't know what their
incorporate
plan
them somehow?
would be.
Like,
I don't know. Yeah, like, does it make sense to keep Euro? Probably. I would imagine Eurogamer has a pretty big audience, so they'll probably probably just become like Eurogamer, IGN, or something, and then they'll just feed the trailers out on those platforms as well, and that'll just bolster their exposure, right? The exposure they can offer their clients when somebody wants to pay to get a trailer out there. But
that's a good point. That's actually a really good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
If they really are just selling basically space, like ad space to companies to sell, for trailers or whatever,
so
whatever it might be.
Why not keep, basically they could take any of those companies and just monetize them better. They're like, hey, Rock, Paper, Shotgun. Yeah, you guys aren't doing well because we control most of the ads coming in. People want to just pay that money to IGN because we get it further, but now we'll figure it out. We'll make your business model work or something, you know?
I mean,
I don't know.
Be it.
We're just guessing here. I hope they're not laying off a whole bunch of game journalists, but it does seem like traditional game journalism is, I don't know what's happening to it, man. I wouldn't want to be in that industry though right now, just because of all and on top of all the AI stuff too. I mean, we could go to Chat GPT right now and be like, write me a review for Assassin's Creed or something, and it'd probably spit something out that you could post on our website, you know?
Probably, and it probably does.
Yeah. Oh yeah, some of that stuff's happening for sure. For sure.
Yep.
So yeah, that's interesting. I talked about Homeworld 3 a little bit last podcast.
Yeah, did you finish it up?
Yeah, I finished it, and I said I was enjoying it in the last podcast, which was true. I had just gotten into it, played 2 or 3 missions of the campaign.
Yes.
It does not evolve with any of the depth, unfortunately. And it's such a pretty game. They did such a good job with the artwork, and the audio is so good, and they captured the essence of the feeling of Homeworld, I guess.
Okay.
You're playing it and you're like, this is definitely Homeworld. And then you start telling your units to do stuff, and it just starts to fall apart. You're trying to control massive fleets of spaceships, and it's all about unit composition and formations and timing your attacks and using the right ships to counter the other ships. It's all rock, paper, scissors type gameplay. And then just like most of the time you're fighting with your ships just to do what you want them to do. You're like, guard that ship. Why aren't you guarding it? Oh, you're taking like 30 seconds to get into formation.
To turn around?
The ship is flying off and getting blown up by something else. And then it's just got all these like really awkward problems that should have been solved way early on in the development, as opposed to people.
Did you have a hard time understanding what ship looked like what ship at a glance?
Yeah. So that's another problem too, is they did this a lot in a lot of game development stuff, especially with spaceship games. They really try and go, here's the good guy ships, they're all triangles, and here's the bad guy ships, they're all circles or whatever. And that kind of becomes the thematic idea of the ships. But within the triangle and the circle rules, you get a lot of variety. In Homeworld, that variety is so minimal that at a glance you're like, well, all the frigates look like frigates, and in fact the destroyers also look like frigates. It's quite annoying when you're selecting an enemy fleet to attack, because there's a huge difference between a destroyer and a frigate.
Oh, I believe it.
In terms of gameplay impact, but in terms of visual impact, I couldn't tell. And so there was times where I'd attack a group of destroyers that I thought was a group of frigates, and then you get in close and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Destroyers can obliterate my carrier, and I'm using my carrier in this attack run, and now my carrier is getting thrashed. So there's just some stupid stuff like that where you're like, why didn't you make it look more interesting? Because the original Homeworld games did a great job of that, where there's no confusing like an ion frigate with a missile frigate
ambiguity.
Or missile. Yeah. So they get some problems there. But that honestly is the smallest of their problems. It's really just comes down to really, really unenjoyable unit control. And I think and their story too. Their story sucks.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Have you tried getting good level cap?
Well, I mean, I beat it. What do you want from me? Like, I beat the game.
That's the response I hear all the time. Oh, it sounds like you just have a case of needing to get good.
Yeah. I mean, it's a predominantly single player RTS. Like, what do you mean get good? Like,
no, I was just giving you a hard time.
No, I know. I will say the silver lining is that their roguelike RTS version of the game looks cool, and it seems like it's already set up for modding with people messing with the settings and stuff. So I'm like, that's cool. That shows some good foresight. It just really needs strong unit control as a backbone, because if you have an RTS that looks fantastic and has all these cool features in it, but the unit control sucks, it doesn't matter.
Like ass.
Yeah. You're like, okay, just attack together, fighters and frigates, and then the fighters are like, oh, we'll go in first and get decimated, and then the frigates show up with no fighter control, and you're like, can we just? Why doesn't this ever work? It just never works.
Which is too bad, because real-time strategies, I love them, but they are definitely, I wouldn't say a dying breed. Well, they are a dying breed. We have been seeing more of them being kind of popping up recently, but
I don't think they're dying. Like they're more just being redefined in terms of budget and expectations on monetary success. So I think we're seeing more RTSs come out than ever before, but they're just aimed at smaller price points and smaller audiences. And that was another fault of Homeworld, is that,
and more indie too.
Yeah. So Homeworld's a huge, kind of a highly recognizable IP, but they charge $60 for it. And then they're trying to do the season 1 pass stuff for like $80 and all this other stuff. Boy. And when you play the single player, some of the CGI for the characters is like laughably bad. You're just like, oof, this is not $60 game CGI. This is indie studio CGI. And then out of the whole campaign, I'd say a third of it is watching cutscenes. There's a lot of cutscenes in it. Which on one hand, I'm like, that's cool that they're trying to add a lot of context and narrative stuff, but then the writing is so bad and the CGI is so bad that you're like, okay, I would have rather this had been like a voiceover while I was playing a mission, as opposed to taking me out of the mission. And
see, I'm the opposite. I'd rather have a cutscene, because I can't pay attention to when I'm playing, and I have such a hard time playing a game and listening to dialogue, because I'm like, I can only focus on one right now.
Yeah, no, that's fair. If it's in-game dialogue, you gotta do like a sentence or two and like cut it off there, because any more than that, and you're like, I'm fighting guys right now. Leave me alone.
Please. Yeah. They're unveiling their master plan while you're being swarmed, in a real-time strategy. There's like, you have no brain power to like compute what's happening other than just, focusing on your units. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. I want to give them a chance to try and make the game better, because their roguelite has potential. They just need to fix some stuff. So I'll check it out again if they can update it and whatnot, because it's a pretty game, man. It's so pretty looking. So
hopefully they tighten it up.
Yeah. Sad though, because I was waiting like 20 plus years for a sequel to Homeworld. Yeah. You're like, that's it. All right.
Nostalgia didn't do it for you. It just wasn't enough.
No, unfortunately.
It's too bad.
Yeah. So what else you playing, man?
Oh, I checked out Hellblade 2.
Yeah.
Senua's Saga.
Yeah.
And it was gorgeous. Yeah. One of the prettiest graphically developed games I think I've ever played, in terms of like actual, like, HD textures and everything like that. It is stunning. Like, there is moments where I was inside of a house and I'm like, that looks real. Like, that actually looks like it's Unreal Engine 5, I think.
Yep. And they've been using that game to basically promote the engine. They're like, look what our engine can do.
Yeah. So absolutely stunning moments, at least like individual textures and objects looked fantastic.
Yeah.
The sound was also really great. Because she is, it's about mental health and dealing with mental problems and stuff like that. And so she, I believe, is schizophrenic. So she hears voices all the time. And the way they like whisper into your ear constantly, and just the overall ambience of the audio was also top notch. The stunning facial animations and the animations in general were really great.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, like, incredible.
Yeah, we should also say that like I think most of the characters in the game are motion captured.
Yeah.
So and that's like showcasing Unreal's new motion capture to like meta human or whatever their character tech is called. Looks incredible. So a lot of those performances are like actors being captured, I would say, more authentically than I've seen in any other game before in terms of like what they look like in real life to on screen. You often lose a lot of that in how games do it, where there's just not enough detail or the textures aren't quite right and their faces look a little more plasticky. This one seems like it really transferred that across.
I mean, like, she's got nose hair. Like you can actually, you can change the camera like a photo mode, and you can see she has nose hair. Like it's the attention to detail on the character models is nuts. So very pretty graphic wise, great audio. Visuals are fantastic. It's not a video game though. It's not really a game. 80% of the time, you are pressing left trigger or left bumper and forward. That is the game. That's
really unfortunate, and I really don't like that either. That always drives me crazy when I'm playing a game that I'm like, it seems like these people just wanted to make a movie.
And they did. And it had some interesting story elements where you're dealing with grief and loss and trauma and people overcoming that and not, bringing that trauma to the next person. And, it's about, being stronger. And I like some of the messaging, but it almost felt like, especially the final boss, it just kind of ends and there's no like big conclusion. It's just kind of like, oh, and Senua's, that was her saga. It's like, is that it? And it's 5 hours, by the way. It took me about 6 hours to complete a $50 video game.
50?
$50.
Yeah.
It's on Game Pass. So this is like one of the best reasons to, if you are interested, to get it on Game Pass.
Yeah, that would be a good Game Pass game.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to call it a game, I guess, more of a long QuickTime event, even though nothing's QuickTime anymore, but this phrase came from games that were just using video sequences where you just press a button that says like, press X to punch guy or whatever. And you're like, am I playing a game or a pick your own adventure type thing? It just gets very weird after a while. To
expand upon, it's not just walking forward. You do have like some combat where you have 3 buttons. You can do a light attack, heavy attack, and then you can dodge. Oh, and you can parry. So there is that.
Yeah.
And it's very cinematic. I think there's less input on the player side compared to the first game. So they kind of dumbed it down even more, which is surprising because the first game was pretty basic with its combat. But it's really incredible in terms of like a cinematic, because you'll be taking out one guy and then another guy will come in, and the way that they like organically enter into the fray is really cool. Like they did a very good job with that to just make it feel seamless. So that was impressive. But then you realize that every combat encounter is like that. Like there might be a couple of enemies that like this guy uses an axe and you have to slightly dodge differently, or this guy throws fire at you with flame, like a flamethrower or flame breath, and it doesn't really do anything beyond that. There are some puzzles, but those puzzles are basically the puzzles that you saw in the original game, where you have to like line up environment to make it like into a symbol. You guys, what I'm talking about, where you have to like find the right angle and then focus, and then it creates a symbol, and you do it, and you do that like so many times. You do that so many times.
That's gotta get so boring, man. Because it's like, I can appreciate that doing that once or twice, or maybe it's like these certain temples or something you find that's the puzzle for them. But if that becomes like the main secret,
their puzzles get a bit repetitive. They don't really mix it up a lot. It's just kind of the same puzzle, but in a different area. And they do some interesting things where things like swap around. I don't want to get into like spoilers, but I was a little let down by Hellblade 2. I'm glad I played it because it was different and new. Like I said, graphically, it was very impressive. Though I will say, and I think this which is fine for if this is what they were going for. Even though it had some of the best fidelity in terms of the environments were boring. It was gray rocks, brown rocks, green rocks. At one point you go into a really creepy tunnel, which was great.
Geologists will love this game.
Tunnel.
Yeah.
Right. So like if you looked at this game individually, the pixels, it's like, damn, that looks really good. But it is no Ghost of Tsushima.
That rock tech is beyond any rock tech I've seen before.
Yeah, you don't have like that wow moment when you're in Elden Ring and you exit out of the tomb at the very beginning and you see the Erd tree and the Stormvale castle out in the distance. You're like, oh my God. Like that game texture-wise, pretty ass. Like Elden Ring, like the actual individual textures, not great, but the art and the art direction and the way they use lighting and everything like that far and exceeds anything that Hellblade 2 was able to accomplish.
Yeah. I agree with you there. It's funny how you can get lost in the details of design, and then once you pull your nose away from the artwork, you're like, oh, what did I create? Something kind of boring, really. Once you step back, you're so focused on the details. It's like, you forgot about composition. And yeah. Well, that's unfortunate to hear. Really cool looking game. Seems like it might have just been a vehicle for the Unreal Engine.
And also it's the fact that it's $50 and it's only about 5 to 6 hours. Just like, man,
that's asking.
What were they doing? Like, what were they doing for all those years? Like, I remember them like having like really big. Not sure they had like performances at like game shows and stuff like that, and award ceremonies where they were like. It's like, man, they're putting a lot of money into this game. And then, but that was like years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like, what were they? I know game development is hard. I'm not trying to diminish that, but to only get 5 to 6 hours to complete the story, it's not a lot.
I wonder how much of that was like maybe Epic coming to them and be like, hey, could you squeeze in this cool feature? We'll give you X amount of dollars to do it. And they just kind of kept going back to add in new features or update it or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to say, man. That's unfortunate to hear. Maybe that type of game appeals to some people who really just want the story and don't care about the gameplay as much. But
there are positives.
From the gamer perspective, though, if you're looking, I mean, I have a really hard time of removing that equation from any game, which is like the gameplay's got to be the first thing that is good. Like it can't come second or third, and that's what I said in my Homeworld review, which was like, it's a visuals first, gameplay second project, and I'm just tired of that.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, it's unfortunate. I know you've been excited to hear about Star Citizen stuff going on. They released a brand new ship. It looks cool, Matt. It looks.
Does it?
Yeah. It's called.
Can you bring it up on the little screen thingamabob, or is that not possible for you to do in real time?
Oh yeah, in real time. Let's see if I can do that.
Oh yeah, look! Oh man, look at this technology.
I have to add a thing. Add a.
If you can't do it, don't worry about it. I was just thinking.
Yeah, I'll get stuff for
what's the ship called?
It's called the Ironclad. It's a big old. It's a
Star Citizen.
Yeah. It's kind of a freighter. It's Drake's big freighter, and the top of the ship.
My God, it's huge.
It is massive.
Holy, bro, you could like, oh my God.
The top of it opens up so that when you're in space and you need to load cargo, you can just drop it all down the top right into the cargo bay. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Dude. God damn it, Star Citizen. Why gotta keep adding all these ships that don't do anything actually in terms of gameplay? Finish your game.
I know. It's only, well, Matt, hang on. It's only $400 for the entry level model. I think it gets up to like 500 something for the combat version, which has an internal repair bay, which sounds kind of cool actually. But yeah, it's insanely expensive. That look is warranted.
$400 or $500. God, it looks really cool though. Oh my Lord. That is a sick ass looking ship.
I mean, if somebody flew that thing over you while you're like on planet killing some tiger things or whatever, and they're like, "Get in, Matt. We're going on an adventure." You'd be like, "Okay," you just jump in right away.
See, the space nerd in me just like, is geeking out. And then I hear the $400, $500 price tag. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
My recommendation with Star Citizen is like, if you want to play the game and you don't want to spend any money, just make some friends. All the people with the big ships want to show off their big ships.
That's true.
So it's very easy to make a friend who's like, got their big ship, and they're like, I need a gunner.
If you wanted to grind something of this equivalent in the game, how long would it take you to get the money to actually be able to grind for it?
It's really hard to say because they keep changing the economics with every major patch.
True.
And there was like a massive duping problem with this latest patch. So,
which apparently happened last time I played a year ago. So it sounds like duping's always a problem.
Yeah, that one's going to be an interesting thing to try and solve in the long run. Like, we really need to solidify our economy.
And people are duplicating money.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's also a billion ways to exploit the economy in other ways,
So if you were playing legit though, and you weren't duping, how long do you think it would take to?
I guess it depends how hardcore you're going, but maybe like 100 or 200 hours or something.
Okay, that's
maybe
200.
I think it depends. Like if you're going solo and you're like just doing some mining and stuff like that, it could take, maybe you do it quicker like that.
So this is like an end game ship.
For sure. Oh yeah, that would be end game.
Which I guess is kind of cool, right? Like you grind, but that's only if you go for just that ship though. So if that's like not buying like other ships to like slowly progress to the bigger ship. That's like, bam, all I'm focused on is getting enough money for that ship and that ship alone.
Well, also you could say the same thing about like EVE Online. Like you're never going to solo, like the biggest ships in that game, you will never get playing solo. Like
you would need a crew to be able to manage this ship anyways, right?
Well, I mean, you couldn't even, there's no way you would be able to afford it by just like going solo unless you were like playing the market or something and being some stock market guru in EVE Online. But
I get that. But at the end of the day, it is still a game about buying ships, and to have a ship that you can straight just buy with money.
Oh yeah.
And then like that's kind of the problem I'm sort of alluding to, is the amount of pay to win is just going to be I think it's going to be a huge issue when the game eventually does come out. You're going to have all these people that have like all the ships already. It's like, well, what's even the point of the progression if everyone just has all the ships because you can go to the market and buy them? It's
going to be very hard to try and figure out because, and I do not envy CIG when they get to this point, because they've intentionally stayed very nebulous as to how ship insurance is going to work. And so when you buy a ship with real world money through their market, their store page, you drop $400 on a ship. Okay, you get that ship with its lifetime insurance package. We don't know what that means, and we don't know how long insurance is going to take to claim a ship. So currently, the bigger ships take longer to claim with insurance, and you can pay in-game money to expedite the insurance fees, but they can scale that up as much as they need to try and balance it out at the risk of pissing off the people who paid money for those ships. So they're like, well, I paid real money for this ship, I should get it back. And they go, okay, well, it'd be too unfair if you have the biggest ship in the game and you can just get it every hour. So now if you get it and you lose it, maybe it's 24 hours, maybe it's 48 hours. Like at some point they're gonna piss too many people off who put too much money into the game, or they're gonna piss off the other people who just want a fair experience.
I wonder if they're gonna create servers where it's level playing field for everybody, where it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Well, that's. I don't think they're gonna either, but I think a lot of people would be interested in that, right? Everyone starts at 0. Right. And they do like a wipe system, like in Tarkov or whatever, where like every 6 months or whatever, we just have these new servers and you can join them and you can just play from the beginning again. Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do that with some of the settlement stuff, where like eventually you'll be able to build bases and stuff. Maybe they'll start doing wipes on that, where they're like, hey, okay, everybody's had their bases set up and everything, but we're going to do a wipe and reset some of the rules on how this stuff works. Like, I could see that more than. I don't think there's any way to get around the ship thing because that's what's funded the whole game. So how are you going to make a server where everybody has no ships at all? I do think
no, literally, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. One of the things they talked about balancing out the bigger ships is that ammunition and some of the really big ships might not come with all the high-end turrets or the components to make them run well. So you will need some money and a crew to even make those things viable. On top of which, if you have a huge ship and somebody has a little tiny starting ship, well, it's hard to catch the small ships with the big ships. Like, the big ships are meant for big operations where
I get that.
The smaller players might not even feel impacted by them as much. They might actually suffer much more at the hands of pirates and small ships, coming after them.
The reason why I bring up the idea of having a couple of servers or whatever where you could opt into just everyone starting from scratch is literally the sense of progression that everyone's going through, where it's, you don't log in. It's like, oh, it's day one, it's launch day, and I'm in there, and everyone's flying around with their $10,000 ships that they bought 20 years ago, right?
I like that idea. For the record, it will never happen, though, because CIG doesn't want to segment their player base. And on top of that, they don't want to punish, because what if everybody flocked to that server? What if half of Star Citizen's population flocked to the hey, we all start equal server, and then all the guys who dropped 10 grand on spaceships are relegated to their like space whale server? It would be pretty
great.
Yeah. I think CIG is just going to have to kind of bite the bullet and really nail down some balance once they finally get to that point in the game and be like, all right, this is how often you can reclaim your ship. Maybe I'd be fine with them saying, hey, if you got a giant ship and it's like a week claim time on it, unless you pay a buttload of money, then like, all right, like that's fair play at that point, right? Like, you still get your giant ship back in a week, and anyone who has the biggest ship in the game also has like 50 other ships at that point. So if they lose their biggest ship, they'll be like, fine, I'll just take my second biggest ship.
I'll just take the second one.
Yeah. So who knows? We're so far away from having any idea what Star Citizen's actual endgame is like that.
Right.
It's all just speculation and idea crafting at this point. But
I hear you.
Yeah, people have been enjoying the latest patch a lot more.
I had fun with it when we played like a week ago. So yeah.
Yep. Excited for what's coming. I see you saw Dune 2?
I did. Finally? And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was incredible. Like, oh my God. Like it's like weird, like the moment to moment isn't anything like insane, but like the way that it builds and the like I don't know, just like great character development and seeing the progression of some of them. And then at the end, I'm not going to spoil anything.
Yeah.
But the scene in the cavern with a bunch of people around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, heavens have mercy on my soul. That was such a buildup. And man, the reaction and it was so good. I loved it.
Dude,
it was fantastic.
The way they handled the daughter.
Yes.
That was so cool, man. Yeah. Like that the whole way they handled the daughter communicating while
it gets so weird. Like it's a weird, like you're like, wow, this is actually a really weird franchise.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get weirder.
That's what I love about it, is it's so weird. It came out a long time ago and its concepts are still so bizarre compared to most mainstream sci-fi stuff. You're just like, wait, what is happening? What are you talking about?
I think the book came out before like computers were really even that like predominant, right?
Yeah.
Like there was the concept of computers and the concept of like AI and stuff, but there wasn't like not anywhere close to what we have by today's standards, not even close. So to create this world and have a sci-fi that is so grounded and with just really interesting ideas is just so much fun to witness.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited that they're making a third movie.
Well, I mean, it's made $700 million, I heard. So, I mean, it's making bank right now.
Well, that's a good segue actually into, speaking of witness, I saw Mad Max Furiosa.
Which hasn't made any money.
which has made $25 million domestic over the 3-day opening weekend. Now, I did go see it in theaters, and it's a great movie.
That's what I hear.
It is fantastic. It's so interesting and like different from the first one in not visually speaking. It's like it's all the same stuff, deserts and cars and people fighting each other, but the characters in it are very different and interesting in their own different ways, and story's long and it's like epic, and it's a really, really fun prequel to Mad Max. Fury Road was the first, I don't know, whatever it's called.
Well, the one that was 10 years, it came out like 9 to 10 years ago. Does it feel like
crap.
that long? Yep.
Dang.
Welcome to old age.
My God. I know, but it is like, it had $168 million budget, and to make 25 mil in its opening weekend is
really bad.
Also, and it has fantastic reviews. And
that's what doesn't make any sense. Is like, I mean, I don't want to go to I don't go to theaters, so I know I'm part of the problem. But
yeah,
I think
the helmet.
Yeah, I think a part of it is they've made everything so goddamn expensive for like theaters, and also they've made it so convenient to just wait for streaming.
Yeah,
it's like, I mean, I could go, or I could just wait at home with my, my theater system. And just watch it where I can pause to go to the bathroom. I don't have to worry about people being obnoxious next to me, and enjoy it in the comfort of my own home. Like,
I read an interesting article that talked about prequel problem, which is that with Dune, the first movie is the first movie. The second movie takes place after the first movie, and so you want to see what happens to the characters to see where they're going, right? It kind of leaves you with a cliffhanger thing, and so you got to see the sequel, and so that's a much higher rate of return when you do first movie and the second movie. But Mad Max Furiosa, it's a prequel, and so we already kind of know what's happening to the characters, and
doesn't have Mad Max in it.
Not exactly, no.
Well, it's not advertised at all. It's like it's her story, not his story.
For the most part, the answer is no to that question. Yeah. And yeah, it's new characters, or it's new actors playing the characters, and it was great. But I understand from the marketing standpoint, yeah, that is a little less exciting. And also, the first Mad Max had that whole, hey, we built all these vehicles and filmed all of this in real life out in the desert angle. Yeah. And the second one didn't really market that as much. And I know a lot of it was filmed in desert stuff, but also the styling of the movie is a bit more heavy-handed, which could lead you to believe from the trailers, which I thought from watching the original trailer, that they just went overboard with the CGI. And I don't think that they did. I think that a lot of it was done practically. But because the styling is so heavy-handed, it feels kind of like CGI, like they Fast and Furious did.
I think they used CGI this time around more than the first one, because the first one, like the amount that they used in practical was like almost impractical. Like the fact that even got made and people didn't get hurt is really impressive.
I think that's what happens, is it's so much work to do that practically. Where it's like the Lord of the Rings versus the Hobbit syndrome, right? Peter Jackson did it right with Lord of the Rings, and it took them like how many years to make those movies? Like,
well, it wasn't that once they were filming, it didn't take very long, but the preparation to build up to it was years.
No, I mean, the actors were out in like New Zealand for like years, I think. Like it took a long time.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, they filmed all three in like a row though, so it wasn't like they were taking. But I think it was 10 years.
Huge amount.
It was a big
work.
effort. Yeah.
And so the second time around, they're like, let's just make a whole bunch of giant green screens and just do a whole bunch of green screen stuff, and you could feel it. The movie just didn't feel authentic, and I don't want to say that it took away from this movie that much, because some of the action sequences are flipping cool, man. Like they really, after the movie was over, I was just like reliving some of the action sequences in my head and like, damn, that was cool, And as an older guy who's seen all the action movies, it takes a bit to wow me from an action sequence, but this movie really did. And for sure, some of it had to be practical effects, but the styling, the kind of oversaturation of everything, I I think made it feel less real, and it also probably came across in the trailers as being less real, and so that must have had an aspect to it to like make it less appealing or something.
Yeah. I don't know why
it wasn't going up against anything in the box office. There's like nothing else out.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of sucks because I would love to see more Mad Max movies, and this one is great. Also, Chris Hemsworth. He's really good in it, and like
I heard it was one of his best performances.
Prosthetic nose, and he's like, his character's super cool. Anya Taylor-Joy, that's her name. She's great in it. It's all around solid. The vehicles are super dope.
Well, so does it? I mean, so let's say another Mad Max doesn't get made because it flopped so hard. But the movie, like you said, is still good. So it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a fantastic movie, right? So,
yeah. No,
it's still a good movie.
I'm giving it, 2 thumbs up. Go watch it. It's fantastic.
So the only downside is that it might, future stuff is at risk. But at least in the here and the now, for your enjoyment, it's good.
Yeah, it's solid. I will say it was funny. I went and watched it with my wife, and she brought up an interesting point, which was just that their world is so devoid of any hope.
Yes.
Where they're fighting over all this stuff, and you're like, even if you win, what is your life like? It's just awful.
Yeah, it's just horrendous.
You feel that a bit while you're watching it, where you're like, you're rooting for the characters, but like even best case scenario, you're like, and then what? Yeah. You just live in this horrible dystopian world where people are like getting boils and mutated fissures things on their bodies and just like dying all the time. And yeah, so that is an interesting element of it being a less appealing world where there isn't like this
utopia.
There isn't this thing that's going to save everybody. It's like, no, you're just going to maybe not die to this person.
Not die here.
Yeah. But man, it's fun. I do enjoy that universe quite a lot.
Nice.
There was also the world's most boring F1 race over the weekend. I normally save the F1 talk for post podcast, but man, was this race boring.
Care to explain?
Yeah. So the most famous race of F1 is Monaco. Pretty much the most famous. I mean,
I thought it was what was that? 24-hour one?
That's not F1. The Le Mans race or whatever. Yeah, that's not F1.
That's not F1? Okay.
No, that's a really famous race, but yeah. So it's been going in Monaco forever. I think like, I don't know enough
Didn't
of the
you
history.
say Monaco is really boring because there's no room to pass and it's just literally just them going around. There's like literally no action. So it's just people driving behind each other.
Yeah. Yes. But what they do is they require you to take a certain number of pit stops. So cars you're not supposed to be able to load the car up with tires that are going to take it to the end of the race and then just stay on those. You're supposed to have mandatory pit stops. It's usually like 1 or 2, depending on what season it is or what rules they have in place. And the pit stop stuff creates a bunch of interesting strategies. And then if it starts raining randomly and they have to pit for wet weather tires versus dry weather tires, that gets interesting and whatnot. So there can be some stuff that happens to make it interesting. But this race, the very first lap of the race, there's a big crash. Everybody's okay. But 3 cars get wiped out in this crash. And then because of the weird rules and regulations, they pit all the cars because they have to do another standing start. It takes too long to clean up the wreck. It's like 40 minutes to clean up the wreck, right? And get everything off the track. So they do another standing start, but all the cars pitted and that counted as their pit stop for the race. So now the race begins. Everybody in the same starting positions that they were before, 3 cars less than before, or maybe it's 4, I can't remember. There's a few cars out. They've all taken their mandatory pit stops, and now nobody passes anybody for the entire rest of the... Okay, that's not entirely true. There was a few cars at the very back of the field that did some passes here and there, and some that had to do some pits for various reasons. But otherwise, everybody at the front of the pack, like...
Just same all the way through.
Just coasting, basically. So they did the math. The announcers were doing the math for a car behind the one in front.
Why is it so popular then?
Because it's just like history, I guess. It wasn't
like,
always. Yeah. That's
silly.
It's really silly. It's really weird. But so here's the math on it. The car, if a car's going to pass another car on like certain turns and straightaways where you'd have an opportunity to do so, you have to have so much acceleration that you would be doing a 4-second faster lap time than the car in front of it. So unless you're going 4 seconds faster than which is massive.
Just not happening.
Yeah, that like never happens in F1.
Happening.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
you're talking in like, half a second is a huge amount.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's okay. That's stupid. Why that blows my mind that it's popular, but
yeah, even the announcers were saying, we're talking like, they're like, yeah, they're probably going to change up the rules next year on this whole like pit stop regulations, that they're going to have to force it. Otherwise these races are just pointless to a degree.
Yeah. I argue like if you have to force pit stops, then you should just not use this track anymore. But maybe I'm naive to the. I don't think
they're ever going to they're never going to get rid of it. The amount of yachts that are in Monaco that like back up to the racetrack,
a bunch of rich people.
Oh my god, dude, this has got to be the wealth capital of the world. It's insane. I think Monaco is basically a tax haven for like Europeans.
Oh, good.
The Principality of Monaco. Yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous, dude. But yeah, basically, if you need to like,
that is the first picture I see, and it's just stunning. Oh my god,
absolutely stunning. One nice thing about the race is that Charles Leclerc, who won the race, he was born in Monaco, and like that was his dream to win Monaco, and he did win it. So that was like cool for him.
It's so picturesque.
I know, right? Like this is just rich people in Europe that were like,
what's it like to be this wealthy? God,
I know.
Damn.
Well, like at the races, like they'd have like Tom Brady would back his yacht up to the track and like be throwing footballs to like the F1 racers and stuff. And you're just like, this is an era. This is a level of wealth that nobody understands.
Yeah. Very few people get to experience this kind of wealth. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I think Iron Man 2, if you remember that movie.
Yep, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, that was in Monaco. Yeah. So they're just flaunting all their wealth in Monaco, basically.
Of course.
It's pretty though. I mean, if I had $1 billion, I'd probably be hanging out in Monaco as well.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
A nice little place in the south of France, right next to Italy. What's not to like?
Sounds marvelous.
Yeah. Well, you got anything else you wanted to get off your chest?
Other than I love you. I mean, I've been playing Elden Ring again, which has been amazing. I'm preparing for the DLC, and it's everything I remembered about it being one of the best games I've ever played in my entire life. It's just awesome. So I'm playing a whip character.
Ooh.
I'm Ronald Whipman, and whips are not very good.
Yeah.
So you basically just I kind of feel like I'm just kind of tickling the boss. I'm just kind of BDSM over here, just die. Yeah,
wouldn't those creatures like it at that point?
Yeah, I feel like they would. I mean, for how long it takes me to take some of them out with this whip, it is a little bit of endurance, but
you're kind of flogging yourself there. It sounds like with that character, man. You're just
a little
like, bit.
Pretty much. It's been fun though. I can't wait for the DLC. I don't know if I'm going to take the Ronald Whipman into the DLC. I might use one of the other 3 characters that I have.
Enjoy it a bit more. Yeah.
yeah. But God, I can't wait for the expansion. I'm stoked. So other than that, it's been pretty chill.
Cool, man. I'm excited. I'm excited for just to see you play that game. I'm not good enough to play those games, but I can appreciate any game that has such a unique art style and world crafting style where you're just like, good on you guys to just make your own thing as opposed to just
What's great is I kept catching myself. I'm like, man, I love this part of the map. Oh man, I love this section. I'm like, wait, I'm just saying this about every part of the map. I'm just like, man, I love this place. Oh man, this place is amazing. Like, yep. They were cooking with Elden Ring.
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man. It's good to, it makes me happy to see you that excited about a game. Because, I mean, you play everything, Matt. You've played everything.
I do play a lot.
And to get you genuinely, truly, like, enthralled in something, I mean, the game's got to be pretty damn good,
Yep.
2 thumbs up from Intimio.
Yep.
10
3
out
out
of
of 3
10
bowls.
10 out of 10 Matts. 3 out of 3 bowls.
Yep.
All right. Shall we wrap up the pod there?
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming by and listening or watching our podcast. We appreciate you very much. Again, if you want to support the podcast, check us out on Patreon. We appreciate all our Patreon members very much. And we will be doing a little after the podcasts chat with them about little things here and there, what's going on. And otherwise, if you just enjoy the podcast, give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, do all that stuff, whatever your platform lets you do to say you like this thing. We appreciate that very much. And Matt is going to give you some life-changing advice.
All right, this is a good one. So this my words of wisdom this week is try to disconnect from your phone every once in a while. You don't need to be on your phone right before to go to bed. Don't even need to pick up your phone right when you wake up either. Take some time to yourself and just enjoy the silence of reality. Or don't. I'm not your dad.
Solid advice. There is science behind that too. They say minimize screen time before going to bed because it really screws with your sleep rhythm.
Yep. Also, you don't need dopamine every 4 seconds.
Yeah. Unless you're addicted, in which case make sure you get it at least once every 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'll get, I don't know, depressed or something, whatever happens to you.
But yeah, less screen time. At least if you can.
Yep. Good advice. And that reminds me of what I want to talk about post podcast is I've been getting into Golden Sun, the book.
Oh baby, I can't wait to talk about that.
So good. Thank you guys all so much for coming by and hanging out. We appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.
Bye.